Do you guys remember that moment last year when NewJeans held a surprise nighttime press conference and Minji looked straight at a reporter who asked her a question and said, 혹시 이해가 되셨을까요? Do you understand? That's what she said. And that became a meme instantly. 혹시 이해가 되셨을까요? Do you understand? Well, it turns out the journalist definitely remembered that moment. And judging from the tone of the articles coming out last week and this week, they didn't forget and they certainly didn't forgive. So here are the headlines. From The Fact, NewJeans, do you truly understand what is happening? YTN, a no manners night owl idol group, NewJeans disrespected protocol when they left and when they returned. NewJeans wrong choices. Do you finally understand now? See that line? That really became an infamous meme. Revolution? It failed, so it became a coup attempt. The arrogance of the three Jins. ADOR has no reason to trust them. NewJeans lost ear. Will the truth behind their collective mindlessness finally come out? Why are people mentioning body cams in NewJeans' return? NewJeans exclusive contract, that's a column. The time of inevitable consequences, NewJeans and Bunnies, now it's a matter of rationality. NewJeans, is there really any reason they must return as a full group? See, what's wild is how unified the Korean press is right now. They're not hinting or dancing around their criticism. They're openly calling the members rude, entitled, and completely unaware of how contracts, timing, or basic professional courtesy work. And before some of the international fans roll their eyes and say, Korean media is always terrible. But I want to point something out, that when it comes to this case, at least right now, at the present moment, the journalists who have written articles actually sound pretty logical. Their arguments line up, their reasoning is consistent, and honestly, they're highlighting things that some fans have ignored for a year. And the members and the parents included, of course. Now, to them, to the journalists, this isn't a comeback, right? It's a group of young stars crashing back into the door that they slammed behind them. Still unrepentant, still dismissive of procedures, and still acting like the rules do not apply. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly how the Korean media is framing NewJeans' return, why the 5 or nothing narrative is being mocked, and why so many journalists think NewJeans themselves have become the biggest obstacle to their own comeback. And before we get into today's topic, let me give a quick welcome once again, especially to the people who rush into my comments to defend NewJeans no matter what the facts say. Again, like I said in my previous video, you're probably not going to hear this message anyway because you will see the title, get angry, and immediately start typing without watching the video. And that's fine. It's become a pattern at this point. But again, here's the inconvenient truth that you won't want to hear. It wasn't the Korean media that damaged NewJeans' reputation. It wasn't HYBE, and it wasn't the court. It was a refusal to accept reality, and it was cheering on every misstep, and it was insisting the members were flawless while they ignored procedure, ignored contracts, and ignored basic professionalism, to the point where everyone now openly describes them, even the journalists, openly describe them as rude, entitled, and unrepentant. So if you're still yelling, leave them alone, or free jeans, or whatever, without even understanding the facts, congratulations. Again, you're part of the reason the members are facing the harshest media backlash of their careers. If they still have careers. Now, let's start with this first article, published by The Fact, titled, NewJeans, do you truly understand what is happening? Published on November 14th. The lawsuit they lost could actually be a blessing in disguise, but only if they start showing genuine sincerity in their conversations with ADOR. So those are the subtitles for this article. Written by reporter 최현정, I think. Yeah, 최현정. And it starts with this sentence. Do you understand? 혹시 이해가 되셨을까요? That was what Minji said to me at the press conference on November 28th, 2024. So already, this is special because this is the guy who asked them the question, and this is the guy whom Minji responded to. And the article says, I never thought I'll be the one saying the same words back to her a year later. 혹시 정말로 이해가 되셨을까요? Do you really understand? On the evening of the 12th, November 12th, Minji, Honey, and Danielle released a statement saying they had decided to return to ADOR. This came exactly 3 hours after Harin and Hain publicly announced they would continue their activities with ADOR. But the statements from the first two and the latter three contain a decisive difference, the presence or absence of ADOR. Harin and Hain consulted with ADOR first and made their announcement through official channels. Minji, Hani, and Danielle, on the other hand, claimed ADOR did not respond to them and therefore issued their statement separately through a law firm. Some are questioning the sincerity of the three, but I want to believe their closing words. We will continue to meet you with heartfelt music and performances. I really do. 진심이다, the journalist said. I really do. Since that press conference last year, I have consistently hoped NewJeans would be able to resume their activities smoothly. Even back then, when I prefaced my question as not a question but a confirmation, 질문이 아닌 확인, that intention was behind it. Yeah, if I remember correctly, that journalist who asked the question sounded very cautious / confused when they asked them, NewJeans members, whether they really meant what they just announced. But yeah, and the article says, so when Minji responded, do you understand? The first thought that crossed my mind was, honestly, I don't understand at all. And are you really okay with that? I also feel genuinely sorry that her answer has since become a meme dragged out for every NewJeans controversy. Beyond that, I had no other feelings. Wow, okay. As expected, because, I don't know. I mean, that journalist is an adult. And hearing that response from a young girl group member, young girl, 이해가 되셨을까요? Which is a very rude response in the Korean culture context. That journal, I wonder how he must have felt. Well, from this article, it sounds like he was fine. He handled it really gracefully. And I'm hoping that he really means what he just wrote in this article. To the point that he even felt genuinely sorry that her answer has become a meme, has since become a meme, dragged out for every NewJeans controversy. And he said, beyond that, I had no other feelings. As expected, the dream the 5 members spoke of, ending the contract without litigation, was baseless. They lost every injunction and the full lawsuit, affirming the validity of their exclusive contracts. Not a single claim was accepted. In effect, they threw a full year of their lives into the air. But in a way, this defeat has become an opportunity. It gives them a legitimate reason to resume activities by respecting the court's decision, and they have already proven loyalty to NewJeans more than enough. Oh, okay. Okay, interesting interpretation. At the same time, Minijin also released a statement supporting NewJeans resuming activities as a full group at ADOR, hinting that her new agency signals a new beginning for her. Of course, the burden remains. The three must resolve the negative image they accumulated and finish their discussions with ADOR. But the best solution is something they themselves already said. That is, they must keep their promise to meet fans again with sincere music and performances. The article says, the surest way for NewJeans to rebuild trust, it's that. Trust is simple, sincerity and strong performances. And for that, they must approach discussions with ADOR with more honesty and diligence. NewJeans draws this level of attention because they are NewJeans, the article says. Few K-pop groups in history have created a comparable sensation, and because of that, there is as much desire to see them return as there is criticism. To repay the fans who waited and supported them, and to restore trust in the NewJeans brand, this next step is crucial. And that first step is their negotiation with ADOR. If they have decided to stay with ADOR, they need to show respect and come to the table sincerely. That's why the unilateral return announcements from Minji, Hani, and Danielle made without ADOR feels disappointing. In fact, even the word return is incorrect. They were never not under ADOR to begin with. Oh, that reminds me of the saying, like, what do you mean by comeback? I never left. That saying that some artists make. They were never not under ADOR to begin with. As I said earlier, the article says, I sincerely hope NewJeans will resume activities, and I want to believe their promise about sincere music and performances. I hope they return in full force and enjoy success comparable to their peak. Okay. To achieve that, what's needed is not power struggles or psychological games, but sincerity and genuine intent. At this point, I can't help asking whether they truly understand that. Oof. ADOR stated on the 13th that they are arranging individual meetings with each member and will do their best to ensure productive discussions. All we can hope is that these meetings lead swiftly and smoothly to a conclusion. From here on, it's no longer about understanding. It's about basic manners and respect. Wow. That is surprisingly well written. And considering the fact that this came from a journalist who got that response directly from Minji, 혹시 이해가 되셨을까요? It's very composed and very mature. So, yeah, reporter Choi Hyun-jung says that basically the three members' separate announcement shows a lack of sincerity, right? And warns that rebuilding trust now requires humility and manners. So, yeah, and that sets the tone for today's coverage. Why? Because the journalists who once gave NewJeans the benefit of the doubt are now openly asking whether the members even grasp the consequences of their actions. Moving on to YT and article. A no manners night owl idol group, NewJeans disrespected protocol when they left and when they returned. Let's see. All right, published on November 13th. On November 28th, 2024, at around 6 p.m., I was standing at a bus stop after work. So that was the night when they held a surprise press conference, right? So the journalist says, I was standing at a bus stop after work, waiting to go home. My phone rang. It was the desk editor. NewJeans is holding a press conference in Gangnam right now. You should look into it. Sure enough, a press conference invitation had just landed in my inbox. Oh, poor guy. Exactly 1 year later, on November 12th, 2025, Around 8 p.m., another sudden announcement came from NewJeans. After Harin and Hain declared they would resume activities under ADOR, Minji, Danielle, and Honey released their own statements saying they too would return. ADOR, however, responded cautiously. We are currently checking their true intent. Once again, as they did when they left, NewJeans chose to announce major news at night, unilaterally, at a time when everyone else is trying to go home. Oh man. When everyone else is trying to go home. At this point, you have to wonder if NewJeans is an idol group or a parliament of owls, night owls. The article says, the conflict between NewJeans and ADOR isn't fully resolved, but it is racing toward the final phase. And throughout this entire saga, NewJeans has shown one consistent behavior. They always release their most critical messages suddenly late at night. 기습적으로 어둠이 깔린 시간대에 꺼내들었다는 점이다. I have a feeling that these journalists... actually, no, I'm not going to say it. The conflict between... I just said that. The pattern started with their initial contract termination press conference. The media alert went out around 6 p.m. There was still time for ADOR to respond to the content certified letter NewJeans sent. But NewJeans began their press conference around 7 p.m., giving the industry no room to react. Yes, so yeah, they sent those demands to ADOR, and they gave them like 7 days for their response. And ADOR still got time, and they eventually sent the response, like multiple page response, written by, at least written in the name of Kim Joo-young, then CEO of ADOR, before the deadline. But still, for some reason, they were impatient and held a press conference. And the article says, but NewJeans began their press conference around 7 p.m., giving the industry no room to react. Their declaration, essentially saying, we don't have to pay penalties and we don't have to honor our contract, so we are free now, left everyone baffled. ADOR immediately expressed regret, criticizing the unilateral announcement that bypassed all normal procedures. And now, a year later, the same late-night behavior has repeated. Around 8 p.m. on the 12th, Minji, Danielle, and Honey issued their return statements after ADOR officially announced Harin and Hain's return earlier in the day. ADOR seemed unaware of what was happening. They didn't know where the three-member statement had even come from. So instead of, we welcome them with open arms, ADOR said, we are verifying their intent. Not exactly a warm or reassuring response. And I don't blame ADOR for that, because that was so random and unexpected from the three members. And that's what this article is pointing out, right? Not exactly a warm or reassuring response, but yeah, given the fact that they didn't even know where the three-member statement had even come from, that's understandable, right? The article says, incidents like this happen for a simple reason. Disregard for procedure. 절차의 무시 때문이다. Disregard for procedure. In this industry, coordinating the timing and wording of announcements is standard practice. The three-member return announcement ignored this completely, resulting in an avoidable mess of their own making. For the past year, NewJeans has repeatedly shown this same kind of impulsive behavior. In foreign media interviews, they declared, Korea seems to want to turn us into revolutionaries. Yeah, still remember that line. And I'm pretty sure many Koreans are not forgiving NewJeans members for that comment, right? Korea seems to want to turn us into revolutionaries. And they dissed not only the K-pop industry, but the whole nation. All right, back to the article, which says, the controversy then expected to broader discussions about the entire industry structure. They even claimed K-pop treats artists like products, not humans. As if that weren't enough, before any legal judgment was reached, they changed their team name to NJZ and performed a new song. Yeah, Pit Stop, right? I remember that one. The article says the situation became so chaotic that the court had to impose an unusual restriction, banning all independent activities and setting a 1 billion Korean won penalty per member for violations. It's also well known that after declaring contract termination, NewJeans still fulfilled year-end award show schedules, overseas events, and other appearances using HYBE's infrastructure and ADOR staff support. In short, their behavior over the past year was always sudden, unpredictable, and out of sync with industry norms. Maybe that's why they felt comfortable disregarding the working world's unspoken rule. 직장인, meaning the usual, the common people who go to work. The 9 to 6 standard. But the industry, ADOR, and the media all operate on predictability and trust. In 2 words, keeping promises. There's one thing NewJeans must remember now. The only things allowed to be announced after 6 p.m. are a new song or its music video. And the only thing acceptable to drop late at night without warning is a highlight medley or a new album. Wow. This is like a diss rap written in a article form. Jabbing. Yeah, so YTN, this article points out their pattern of sudden nighttime announcements, calling them like a parliament of owls, and says the trio, Minji, Honey, and Daniel, once again blindsided ADOR by dropping news without coordination. And when mainstream broadcasters like YTN start mocking an idol group's professionalism, the mood in Korea has shifted completely. And you have to acknowledge the fact that these journalists who had to attend the nighttime press conference, these guys are like regular employees, and they don't get paid as much as these members did, like more than 5 billion a year. And on top of that, the members were unprofessional and rude. And these members have no one to blame but themselves for these articles being written about them. Moving on to the next one. This time, Star News. NewJeans' wrong choices. Do you finally understand now? Oh gosh. Alright. What will come next for NewJeans? The group that ultimately decided not to walk further down the road of self-destruction and announced their return to ADOR. One thing is clear. If their comeback is not preceded by an apology, they should brace for even greater public outrage. And before moving further, this is something that I mentioned on the night of their announcements in one of my videos, right? And at the time, I said that HYBE or ADOR is really in a tricky situation because they might have to handle the apology as well. Because I don't know. First of all, there's a matter of whether they would put out an apology or not, right? And second of all, if that's happening, in what form are they going to deliver the apology? And thirdly, who are the apologies going to be directed at? And I've been thinking about that too. And will people accept the apologies? You know what I'm saying? And there are multiple parties who might want or at least appreciate apologies from NewJeans. And let me tell you, Korean people, citizens, are one of them. Because, the National Assembly thing where Hani, tearfully talked about that 무시해 incident, that was at the expense of taxpayers' money. And the BBC and Time interview where they said that Korea is turning us into revolutionaries, that angered Korean citizens, right? But of course, that's the most broad audience, the citizens. But there are a lot of parties who might appreciate or not even appreciate the apology if you think about it. For example, the Surfing fans, they sent protest trucks to HYBE headquarters, delivering a message that do not even think about doing a performance of apologies because we're not going to accept that. And I understand that too. In fact, I should be moving on, but let me just one more thing. In fact, I feel like those people who are either demanding or asking or encouraging NewJeans members to apologize properly is those who really want them to do well in their career. Because for someone who just wants them to go away and be done with, who want to be done with NewJeans, they wouldn't want any type of apology from them, if you think about it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. For me, it's really, I feel conflicted about the whole apology issues. I don't know. I might make a video about it. And I might make that video in Korean. Okay, let's move on. Sorry for going tangent. Not really tangent, but anyways. So the article says what? If their comeback, okay, so one thing is clear. If their comeback is not preceded by an apology, they should brace for even greater public outrage. ADOR stated on the 12th, members heading in Hain expressed their intention to continue activities with ADOR. With their families, they carefully deliberated and discussed with us and decided to respect the court's judgment and uphold the exclusive contract. Later that same evening, I'm going to skip that, Minji, Tanya, and Hani shared their own statement and blah, 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 blah. In November 2024, NewJeans declared a contract. Actually, I'm going to skip that part as well. So it's a summary of what happened before. Let's start here. The question now dominating discussion is, what made NewJeans reverse their once unyielding commitment to breaking up with their label? The relationship between both sides still seems unstable, as if the dust has not settled at all. The memory of their explosive debut in 2022, a sensation powerful enough to shake the entire K-pop landscape, is nowhere to be seen. Instead, the group has triggered widespread disappointment with yet another sudden late-night comeback announcement. Rather than, thank goodness they returned, the public response is, they swore they would never return. What exactly are they trying to do now? Yeah, because the public still remembers what the NewJeans members said. Didn't they say that they feel disgusted and they feel sick, like even when they come close to the HYBE building or something? Yeah. The article says, after charging ahead with the countersuit that had no legal foundation, losing completely in court, and being in a position where bowing their heads wouldn't even begin to cover it, their sudden "we will return" stance feels oddly brazen. Truthfully, many of NewJeans' actions during their conflict with ADOR and HYBE fostered public disapproval. The group effectively chose to join NewJeans' front lines in her retaliatory audit showdown against HYBE, pouring cold water on fans' worries about their suspended comeback. They pushed forward without reaching any agreement with ADOR, continued making claims without solid legal basis, and released statements full of grievances instead of facts, only to corner themselves when the court decisively ruled that ADOR's exclusive contract is valid and rejected every one of their arguments. Have NewJeans finally conceded? Even this is unclear. Even their announcement of their return created unnecessary noise. One day before the appeal deadline for the first trial loss, Haerin and Hae made their announcement through ADOR, while Minji, Honey, and Danielle issued theirs separately through a legal representative. Of the 4 members who were not in Antarctica, all visited ADOR CEO Lee Do-kyung with their parents on the 12th, ahead of ADOR's official announcement. Although not all 5 were present, discussions effectively continued toward a full group return. The difference in timing came from the fact that ADOR and the 2 members reached the final agreement earlier. When the other 3 didn't immediately receive a response from ADOR, they rushed to issue their own announcement late at night, reportedly to avoid appearing divided from Haerin and Hae. Uneasy as it felt, NewJeans has now indicated a collective return and is preparing for individual meetings with ADOR, but they have an enormous amount of damage to repair. A year didn't simply pass by. They rejected the K-pop system after claiming they alone changed the industry. They resisted accepting legal outcomes, and realistically, even if they had won the first trial, there's no guarantee their behavior would have been any different. They insisted on being right and charged forward on conviction alone. But as the 50-50 case showed, the girl group 50-50, exclusive contract disputes are never resolved by claiming something feels unfair. In the end, all they proved is how complex and unforgiving these disputes really are. Yep, there we go. So this article essentially argues the members acted brazen even after losing every lawsuit, and says their rushed, fragmented comeback message only deepened the public's frustration. And essentially strongly suggesting that they should sincerely apologize before even making a comeback announcement. All right, moving on to My Daily article titled Revolution? It failed, so it became a coup attempt. Published on November 13th. 끝은 돌아옴이었다. The end was a return home. On the 12th, all 5 members of NewJeans, I'm going to skip that, blah, 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 blah. The 567-day standoff over the validity of their exclusive contract, the full freeze on ads and content, and multiple injunctions has finally come to a close. Well, we're not sure yet, though, but the article says like that in the introduction. Their so-called revolutionary bid for independence was stopped cold in the courtroom, leaving only the most simple and unavoidable option, going back home, 집으로. The turning point was the court. The court repeatedly granted ADOR's injunctions, blocking NewJeans from doing independent ads or activities, and even accepted ADOR's indirect compulsory execution request, meaning each member would owe 1 billion won per violation. In the main lawsuit confirming the exclusive contract's validity, the court again sided with ADOR, stating former CEO Minijin's dismissal cannot be seen as a contract breach, and the exclusive contract does not require that she be the one managing ADOR. NewJeans initially signaled their intent to appeal, but as the deadline approached, they shifted direction. Legally, strategically, and financially, their odds of winning had collapsed. The way they announced their return exposed the reality even more starkly. I'm gonna skip that because we have already read enough. Now, this part. It says that their statement included a peculiar line. Our communication was delayed because one member is currently in Antarctica and ADOR has not replied to us, so we were forced to share our position separately. ADOR's contrasting responses reveal the lingering fracture. To Haerin and Hae, we will support your activities. To the other 3, we are checking their true intentions. Online, the terms 2jin and 3jin, 2 jeans and 3 jeans, circulated mockingly. In the process, all the public-facing frames NewJeans had previously pushed lost their power. With the possibility of hundreds of billions of won in damages looming, appealing would have only prolonged the ordeal, essentially eating away at their own future income. The public wanted performances, not declarations. Companies wanted contracts, not feelings. What remains now are restoration and redefinition. ADOR says it is proceeding with the return process, and there are reports that the new album is already well underway. But releasing music is one thing. Returning as a functional team is another. A year-long battle has split the fandom and shredded the net of trust. Brands and advertisers will eventually reach out again, but sponsorships are built on one thing above all else: stability. Until NewJeans proves internal unity, clear messaging, and real risk management, big contracts will move cautiously. Their exclusive contract runs until July 2029. Regardless of Minijin saying she supports them, the legal home of NewJeans remains ADOR until then. Yeah, so this article calls the past, 1.5 years, a failed revolution, saying that their return wasn't a triumphant homecoming, but a strategic retreat after total legal defeat, right? So it was a failed coup. And yeah, notice the wording, coup attempt or a failed revolution. So Korean media is essentially framing this as the members trying to overthrow their own agency and losing. Moving on to TV Daily. The arrogance of the three Jins. 끝까지 오면은 3진스. ADOR now has no reason to trust them. Wow, that's already harsh. Even though all members of NewJeans have declared their return to ADOR, the drastically different ways each member announced their return are already causing confusion. Hae and Hae shared their decision through ADOR. Minji, Honey, and Danielle, now mockingly called three Jins by the community, announced their return separately through a private law firm. ADOR, it turns out, had no prior knowledge that these three were planning to announce anything at all. And then ADOR's statement. But the approach taken by the three Jins was entirely different. Instead of coordinating with ADOR, the three chose to distribute a statement to reporters via a separate law firm. Unlike Hae and Hae, who formalized their return after discussions with ADOR, the three abruptly claimed they were forced to announce separately because ADOR did not respond. Blaming. The article says, their return announcement wasn't just rushed, it was excessively rushed. 급해도 너무 급했다. When they left, all 5 members acted unilaterally, but at least Hae and Hae notified ADOR and coordinated their return. Meanwhile, the three Jins reportedly conveyed their intent to return on the same afternoon Hae and Hae made their announcement. Yet, they framed the situation as if ADOR was purposefully ignoring them, adding, because ADOR did not reply, we were inevitably forced to notify separately. In reality, ADOR had absolutely no idea their statement was coming. Their comment, we are verifying their true intent, shows that they had not been informed beforehand. Neither ADOR nor HYBE headquarters were aware that Minji, Honey, and Danielle had sent any return notice. That alone shows how ambush-like the three Jins' announcement was. As expected, their statement immediately sparked controversy. Fans questioned, did they announce this without fully coordinating with ADOR? Do they genuinely intend to return? Fans who had hoped for a clean reconciliation and a full group comeback now feel disappointed once again. Industry insiders were blunt. One person commented, their return really looks like a frantic rush. After Hae and Hae returned, the remaining members probably felt pressure about potential penalties or future lawsuits and hurriedly made a statement. But acting unilaterally on their way out and on their way back only makes them look arrogant to the public. They still seem to have no idea what they did wrong. There's a reason for the three Jins' panicked behavior. On October 30th, the court ruled entirely in ADOR's favor in the exclusive contract validity lawsuit. The ruling reaffirmed ADOR's management authority and rejected every argument presented by the members. much of the decision was devoted to rejecting the claims made by former ADOR CEO Min Jin, the very person NewJeans had aligned themselves with. The deadline to file an appeal was midnight on the 13th. If they filed nothing, the first ruling would become final. With some members already moving ahead separately, the three Jeans likely realized that continuing the legal fight would be impossible. Their return seems to be driven not by loyalty to ADOR, but by a desire to avoid legal risk. The full group return of NewJeans had been one of the entertainment industry's biggest issues. The return process and the members' behavior afterward is crucial not only for resolving conflict, but also for rebuilding trust with their fandom. At this pace, the three Jeans are unlikely to gain anything from their actions. NewJeans once accused ADOR of destroying trust, but now it is ADOR who has every reason not to trust NewJeans. And that was the article, which basically says that the trio, their behavior remains arrogant and unilateral, and argues that their attitude shows they still don't understand what they did wrong. And the recurring theme is entitlement, right? Reporters keep pointing out that the trio behaves as if they're the victims, blaming on ADOR, blaming on others, while ignoring the damage that they caused. All right, we have a few more. Moving on to Sports Soul. NewJeans lost year. Will the truth behind their collective mindlessness finally come out? Wow. Let's go. The music industry largely sees the NewJeans saga as a case of collective ignorance. The group, and more surprisingly, their parents, gravely underestimated the legal force of their exclusive contract. Although they cited loss of trust as the reason for the dispute, industry insiders say ADOR's legal victory was predictable from the very beginning. The first trial ruling, in which ADOR won completely, was simply common sense. With all five members belatedly announcing their return to ADOR, the situation appears to be winding down. Min Jin's once ironclad NewJeans mom kingdom is also nearing collapse. Attention is now turning to whether the hidden stories behind this year and a half long collective mindlessness, 집단적 무지, which began in April last year, will finally surface. From the moment the conflict began, many warned that the actions of the members and their parents would cause enormous damage. Challenging HYBE, a massive corporation, by disregarding the legal validity of an exclusive contract and demanding termination was widely seen as reckless. Many people questioned what kind of powerful temptation could have convinced them to willingly halt an extremely successful career. Until now, most of the truth has been tightly concealed. But the fact that Kane and Hedin returned after deep discussions with ADOR suggests that the hidden backstory may soon be revealed. In the 50-50 case, member Kina, this is the Kina, the only member, original member who returned to her agency. The member Kina, right here, and her parents spoke with several legal experts before returning to Utrecht. And once they returned back, the truth came out, eventually leading to the main lawsuit. It may not happen immediately. By the way, the 50-50 case was also very chaotic and a mess. And surprisingly, there are some people who still believe in the producer who tried to take 50-50 away from a tract, which is, there are some people who ignore the facts, even when they're, the facts surface, you know what I'm saying? Where are we? It may not happen immediately, but as the members resume releasing albums and doing activities under ADOR, it is only natural that they will eventually have to disclose what has been kept secret. Now that they have faced legal defeat and accepted reality, they are likely to reveal the various proposals that lure them. Various proposals that lure them, as well as any behind-the-scenes forces that supported former ADOR CEO NewJeans. Wow. One industry insider explained, NewJeans will eventually lay all their cards on the table on their own. HYBE and ADOR shouldn't push them yet. They need to give the members time so the truth comes out naturally. And we know how NewJeans must be feeling right now. The article says, the insider added, NewJeans used the artist for her own gain. She drove NewJeans into disaster, and the behind-the-scenes forces involved in her actions must also be punished. If the members find the courage to reveal the truth, it won't just hold the guilty accountable. It will be a chance to cleanse the K-pop industry. Wow. Yeah. This is something that a lot of people want to express, but are not openly expressing. I mean, if you think about it, like given the fact that the current administration, the government, really wants the K-pop to thrive, right, as a national industry, then a person like NewJeans and her affiliates who were involved with this saga, they must be prevented from entering the industry entirely, I feel like. So, yeah, we'll see whether the truth will come out. And as the article suggests, there must be some behind-the-scenes forces involved in her actions. And the article says that those forces must also be punished. If the members find the courage to reveal the truth, it won't just hold the guilty accountable. It will be a chance to cleanse the K-pop industry. So yeah, this article, Sports Soul, calls the entire saga collective ignorance or collective mindlessness by the members and their parents, and predicts that as they return to ADOR, the hidden backstory will eventually spill out. And I feel like this is one of the sharpest takes. The idea that their decisions weren't strategic at all, but influenced by outside forces and poor guidance. Okay, moving on to Daily Un. Why are people mentioning body cams in NewJeans' return? Body cam, like for security reasons, right? These devices that you attach to the chest to film stuff, usually worn by police officers, security guards. That's the device that this article is about to talk about. HYBE and ADOR are likely in deep distress right now because of NewJeans' return announcement. On the surface, this should be exactly what HYBE had been desperately hoping for, a moment to welcome them back with open arms. But the situation is nowhere near that simple. First, on November, I'm going to skip the part. And here, let's read this part. The strange part, so it says that first on November 12th, ADOR released a statement confirming that Hain and Hidden wish to resume activities with the label. And go on. The strange part, the article says, is that there was no sincere reflection, apology, or factual clarification regarding the group's past actions. NewJeans' conflict shook the entire K-pop industry. It caused massive damage to HYBE, ADOR, and their artists. Is everything resolved simply because they now say, we're coming back? Is there no remorse toward the staff, colleagues, and teams who suffered because of them? The article says, saying We respect the ruling and will follow the contract is merely stating the obvious. If that's the case, why did they refuse to follow the contract in the first place? Oof. Why did they make claims the court later rejected? They should explain and apologize for that. The court issued a lengthy ruling refuting each of NewJeans' arguments one by one. By the way, I still wonder whether the members or the parents read the full documents. I doubt that's the case. If that's the case, the article says, why did they refuse to follow the... I just read that. The court issued a lengthy ruling refuting each of the NewJeans' arguments one by one. If they accept that ruling, they're effectively admitting their claims were wrong. So what exactly were they basing those claims on? For example, what was the truth behind the ignore them directive? A statement serious enough to be raised in the National Assembly. Because their return comes with no explanation and no apology, even Haerin and Hae's announcement already felt odd. But the other three, Minji, Honey, and Danielle, made things even stranger. They issued their return declaration independently without going through ADOR. And then the article attached the statement. Just like their unilateral termination, their return was yet another unilateral announcement. Termination? Announced. Comeback? Also just announced. Do they think anything becomes valid simply because they say so? Their statements included no apology and even implied blame toward ADOR for not responding quickly enough. Instead of apologizing and seeking forgiveness, they justified their unilateral action. That suggests they have not reflected at all. Reportedly, aside from the member currently in Antarctica, the other four met with ADOR beforehand, and during that meeting, the three members reportedly attempted to set preconditions for their return. If true, that is absurd. Who are they to be demanding conditions at this point? This is why, article says, this is why HYBE and ADOR are facing such a dilemma. Yes, HYBE desperately wanted NewJeans to return, but HYBE wanted artists who could function normally, not artists whose behavior has become difficult to trust. As explained, it is questionable whether any of the members are genuinely remorseful, and suspicions toward the three members are particularly strong. If they resume activities and then later use various incidents to mix truth and falsehood in new accusations, HYBE and ADOR could be dragged into chaos again. This is why some insiders even joked that ADOR staff might need to wear body cams when interacting with them to be prepared for any future disputes over what was said. That's how little trust remains, the article says. ADOR's first reaction to the three-member statement was, we are checking their true intent. That alone says everything. How lacking must their sincerity have been for ADOR, which had been waiting for their return to respond by verifying whether the announcement was even genuine. With individual meetings now being scheduled, HYBE must weigh the risk of accepting them back. Can the idol market trust members who have lost credibility? If all five return, will the two-member faction and three-member faction coexist peacefully? How will other HYBE artists and their fandoms react? Can normal cooperation with staff even function? Yeah, these are the questions that I talked about in my video, right, on the night of their announcement. And we know how HYBE artists and their at least how the fandoms reacted. They're angry and they're concerned. The article ends like this. Yet, HYBE cannot simply reject them either. NewJeans is still a major asset. In this situation, HYBE and ADOR are the victims. But the ones who caused the damage still get to make dramatic declarations, while the victims are the ones left agonizing. Whether they accept or reject the three, HYBE seems destined to take a loss either way. Wow. Fact. And yeah, that's why I sounded very conflicted in that video I made, right? On that night. So this article basically says ADOR may need staff to record interactions because the trio cannot be trusted, pointing out their lack of apologies and their continued blame shifting. And when an outlet even mentions body cams because trust is that low, it shows just how strained things are behind the scenes. Super strained. All right, I think we have like 3 more articles. And I'm reading all these articles because each sounds really different. Of course, they all summarize the cases and then talk about the statements, but their tones and voices are all different, and I thought it was super informative and entertaining at the same time, and insightful. All right, this one is titled. The title is very straightforward. NewJeans exclusive contract. It's a Saturday column. It says the so-called NewJeans incident, which has shaken the K-pop industry for more than a year, now appears to be approaching its end. Hae-in, Minji, Honey, and Danielle, all 5 members who once declared they would never work at ADOR without Minnie Jin, have announced they will return. After abandoning their appeal and accepting the court's, I'm going to skip that part, and start here. So basically, the first paragraph was a summary of the case. Article says, but in an industry where even the biggest stars fade fast, can NewJeans recover the popularity they once enjoyed after losing more than a year? For now, public reaction is not particularly warm. Comments like, you signed the contract, so you should keep it, and finally came to their senses, dominate the discussion. These remarks may feel harsh for members aged only 17 to 21, but that is a prevailing sentiment. While the public does feel sympathy for the girls caught in an adult feud between Bang Seok and Minnie Jin. By the way, this article is written by 한국경제, and no wonder why they're bringing Bang Seok again. And I cannot believe that there are still some people who are saying that this is about the young girls trapped in a feud between Bang Seok and Minnie Jin. When the I cannot even say it properly. The root of the entire case was originated from Minnie Jin's evil intentions. But of course, I get it. I get it why this journalist is trying to frame it that way, right? To sound sympathetic. Where are we? While the public does feel sympathy, blah, 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 they still see contract compliance as a completely separate issue. Conflicts between top idol groups and their agencies are not new. Many of these disputes expose outdated and exploitative practices, leading to industry reforms. The most cited example is when TVXQ members Kim Jae-jung, Kim Jun-soo, and Park Yu-chun challenged their 13-year contract in 2009. That dispute triggered the so-called slave contract controversy and ultimately led the Fair Trade Commission to establish a standard 7-year exclusive contract, a change that reshaped K-pop structure and explains why many groups disband exactly at the 7-year mark. TVXQ. Some of you might know them. By the way, yeah, TVXQ are from SM Entertainment, which is the company that is currently having a feud with some EXO members over the contract, right? Over some controversies. Yeah, SM Entertainment. All right, moving on. The NewJeans conflict has left a different type of precedent. The court made it clear that vague claims like breakdown of trust cannot justify unilaterally tearing up a contract. After declaring their contract terminated, NewJeans waged an aggressive public campaign through live streams and press conferences. In an interview with Time magazine, they cast themselves as revolutionaries battling the injustice of Korean society. At the National Assembly audit, they tearfully claimed workplace mistreatment, saying staff ignored them, told them to ignore, compare them, and failed to show them respect. But the court's ruling was blunt. Disagreements between artists and their agency, is said, are inevitable during the course of activities. Allowing contracts to be voided based on such abstract claims would destabilize the fundamental structure of the entertainment industry. What NewJeans overlooked is this. Fans today do not blindly take the celebrity side in every contractual dispute. After the 50-50 case, fans have become extremely sensitive to tampering and interference from outside forces. Many now switch to a neutral stance and evaluate each case on its own merits. And NewJeans was never a struggling mid-tier agency group to begin with. They debuted with every possible advantage: Bang Xiok's financial backing and Minijin's powerful reputation. That is why many viewers felt a certain distance when they saw the members crying at the National Assembly. Ordinary part-timers and office workers cannot go to parliament and receive national attention over similar grievances. That's true. Today's K-pop market is no longer the chaotic business where artists were trapped for 13 years and received little to no earnings. The ecosystem now includes former investment bankers, capital raised through stock markets, sophisticated marketing across merchandise and platforms, and a global fan base that can generate enormous wealth at astonishing speed. ADOR invested 21 billion won into NewJeans, and each member reportedly earned more than 10 billion won. Yeah, so 5 billion per year, so that might be true. Reportedly received more than 10 billion won. With such elevated status comes expectations of professionalism, sincerity, and good faith. Expectations that this controversy has made clearer than ever. After many twists and turns, the members have returned, and under the same standard contract system, NewJeans must remain with ADOR until 2029. All right. That was this column written by 한경 journalists, 한국경제, Korea Economy. So they stressed that today's fans no longer blindly side with idols in contract disputes, and says that NewJeans must now meet a higher standard of professionalism given their massive earnings and advantages. So this is the business side stepping in, and they're saying outright that you are privileged, you are supported. Now act like professionals. Sounds like an article that would come out of 한국경제, Korea Business, or Korea Economy. By the way, there are some people who still blindly side with idols or these members. I wonder they're still watching this video. We have two more. Oh, this one is interesting. This one and this one. These are interesting. All right. This one is titled The Time of Inevitable Consequences. NewJeans and Bunnies. Now it's a matter of rationality. Okay, so they're even calling out the fandom. This one is published by MK Sports. How do they plan to handle the weight of what they have built up? There is a saying that language is a vessel that holds one's character. Some members of Bunnies, not the entire fandom, but a portion, seem to have forgotten basic decency in their devotion to their favorite celebrities. Ooh. The year-long exclusive contract dispute between NewJeans and ADOR, which shook the entire entertainment industry, ended with all members returning to their original agency. And then it says all the stuff that we have already talked about. Soon after, Minji, Hani, and Danielle rushed out their own announcements. On the surface, the article says, the long saga known as the NewJeans Rebellion has come to an end. But the rift created during the conflict is deep, and there are many obstacles ahead. The first major hurdle is the alignment of opinions between Minji, Hani, and Danielle. Hereafter, the Minhada or MHD trio and ADOR While Harin and Hain reached their decision after a careful discussion with both their families and the agency, the trio announced their return unilaterally through their attorneys without any prior consultation, which is an unmistakable difference in tone. Rumors have circulated that the MHD trio demanded the reinstatement of former ADOR CEO Minnie as producer as a condition for returning, though nothing has been officially confirmed. For now, ADOR's only official stance is that it is verifying the intent behind the three-member statement and coordinating individual meeting schedules with each NewJeans member. We will do our best to facilitate smooth discussions. Before activities can resume, the article says, the trio must first coordinate with ADOR. And because this dispute caused fallout for other HYBE label artists, many people believe an apology must also come. Le Sserafim under Source Music and Islet under Belief Lab were hit with extreme waves of malicious comments and false narratives, to the point of being bombarded daily. Clear separation between the groups and firm measures to prevent recurrence are now seen as essential. And of course, there are other artists and fans who got affected negatively, right? And I know a lot of armies were damaged and hurt because of this saga, but that portion is kind of hard to describe in an article. And this is something that people who've been following this case closely are aware of and understanding. But yes, BTS and armies are also part of this, the portion who might want some sort of apology from them. Because after all, BTS built the company, right? And even RM mentioned that while he was in the military, he kind of indirectly referred to the case, right, during his live stream, that he said something like, there are a lot of things that happened around our company for the past year. And he mentioned that he had like sleeping trouble because of that. Anyways, back to the article. Worry. Clear separation between the groups and firm measures to prevent recurrence are now seen as essential. Throughout the dispute, NewJeans and former CEO Minnie Jin repeatedly framed NewJeans as Kongji, which is like a Cinderella, right? The unjustly mistreated heroine of a Korean tale, traditional Korean tale, while targeting Le Sserafim and Islet, who debuted earlier or later as a source of all harm to NewJeans. As a result, Le Sserafim and Islet were labeled Patchi, which is an antagonist to that Kongji, the Cinderella character in the tale, or HYBE princess, monopolizing all benefits, and became the victims of relentless online abuse. Their content was flooded with comments ranging from NewJeans fighting to vulgar insults that cannot be printed. So yeah, right here, NewJeans fighting, we support NewJeans. These comments were written on Le Sserafim and Islet videos, contents. They even claimed Islet's manager told Honey to ignore her, and went as far as alleging that some Islet members mocked NewJeans through words and actions in court filings. Yet none of this was supported by evidence, and the court found no basis for the claims. The article. Yeah. Do you guys remember that? In court, the NewJeans members, well, through their lawyers probably, or either directly or indirectly, argued that some Islet members mocked them through words and actions. The article, by the way, attached these screenshots of the comments written by NewJeans fans on Islet and Le Sserafim contents, which is just ridiculous. But despite losing the lawsuit due to the lack of evidence, some bunnies still spew malicious attacks at Le Sserafim, Islet, and journalists. On top of that, they continue to post manipulative-looking messages online, insisting they support all five, showing zero awareness or remorse. And again, while this behavior comes from some, any subset of a fandom can easily be viewed as a whole, which is why internal cleanup is desperately needed. And check this out. Some have even emailed reporters insults like F you parasite reporter siding with HYBE, stop stirring things up, and get lost, trash. And of course, there are some like F words, B words bombarded. And these examples are just the mildest ones that can be shown publicly. Most are far worse. And here's a screenshot of the email that I guess the reporter received from one of the bunnies on November 13th. Calling the journalist B word by B word. Are you gonna write an article like that and then dropping F-bombs, stirring things up, blah blah blah, siding with HYBE, receiving a order from HYBE, blah blah blah. All right, moving on. But the article says these are the mild ones. Most are far worse. Given this reality, accepting we want to return at face value without addressing the damage caused is like holding a ticking time bomb. After more than a year of litigation, NewJeans' revolution ended in a white flag surrender, and the negotiation power now lies with ADOR, not the members. If the talks break down, ADOR has full legal grounds to terminate the three members' contracts, and the trio could face astronomical damages as a result. In the end, everything returns to where it should. That is the meaning of inevitable justice. And fans are the face of the artist. The long conflict hurt NewJeans and the Bunnies fandom, but there are also victims who unfairly became patji, who were demonized, dragged into chaos, and subjected to brutal attacks for no reason, referring to the Self-Image outlet. And the article says, your own child is precious, but someone else's child is precious too. What NewJeans needs now is not unconditional support or forgiveness from fans, but humility toward the people who were harmed, lowering their heads, acknowledging the pain caused, and offering sincere apologies. They must never forget the principle of inevitable justice or karma. That reminds me of these posts that I wrote earlier today on social media. I wrote, someone commented on my video, I love NewJeans. The ones who hate them now are just fake fans. They never love their music and personalities genuinely. Only the ones who support the members also in the difficulties are the truly loved fans. My response. 1. True fans don't blindly worship. They care enough to question. 2. True fans don't let them walk into hell and call it love. And 3. True fans don't side with someone who wrecked their group. And similarly, this article says that what NewJeans needs now is not unconditional support or forgiveness from fans, but humility toward the people who were harmed, lowering their heads, acknowledging the pain caused, and offering sincere apologies. And they should do what? Must never forget the principle of karma or inevitable justice. 사필 규정. So yeah, this article says the trio, MHD, Minji, Honey, Danielle, may face astronomical damages if talks fail, and criticize the extremist part of the fandom for fueling false narratives and harassing other groups and even journalists. And so this article hits both the members and the fandom, stressing that some bunnies caused real harm and that apologies are overdue, not excuses. And this is something that I think is one of the things that HYBE and ADOR are stressed out by. Because even if even if NewJeans members truly realize what they have done for the past year and then come back as just totally changed persons, people, some of the fandom, some bunnies will still remain the same and remain toxic, right? But if NewJeans members are back, those the fandoms, the fans will also be back, which will be kind of problematic and messy and chaotic, which is why that a lot of people simply want these members to go away after paying fines, penalties. But of course, even though they made tons of money, they don't have that much. So I saw some comments calling for all the bunnies around the world to collect money and wire them so that they could simply pay the penalties and leave. Yeah. All right, last article, which is kind of relevant and connected, titled, this one is from Sports Soul. NewJeans, is there really any reason they must return as a full group? Wow. 꼭 완전체일 이유가 있을까? Released on November 17th. Oh, wow. Okay. I just saw the first sentence. So this was the latest article that just came out today, November 17th. 이보다 더 무례할 수 있을까? How much ruder could this get? The immaturity of the members who still haven't figured out their own position is frustrating enough. But the adults egging them on show an even more alarming lack of judgment. One can't help but wonder, does ADOR really have any obligation to put NewJeans back together as a full 5-member team? Public sentiment isn't on their side. After all, this is a humiliating U-turn following a complete legal defeat in a dispute they began under the banner of broken trust. Cornered and beaten, they ended up right back where they started. Even the court rejected their long criticized, self-serving attitude toward their contract. The least the members and the parents should have done was approach the situation with humility. Instead, they are still acting as if they hold all the power. Hedin and Hain returned only after close, deliberate discussions with ADOR, but Minji, Honey, and Danielle issued their own statement the moment ADOR didn't reply fast enough. A unilateral announcement. Again. They should have waited. They should have given ADOR the time to present a dignified "we want you back" message, allowing ADOR to take them in from a position of maturity. Instead, the losers of the war are the ones making demands. And for ADOR, which has spent over a year tangled in exhausting conflict, this is awkward at best. Accepting the trio under these circumstances will be a blow to its pride. A music industry insider put it bluntly. Check this out. Those 3 members are unbelievably rude. Returning like this is not acceptable. ADOR should have been able to welcome them back gracefully, but with the way they have come crawling in, it hurts Kpop as a whole. Ooh. To this, former ADOR CEO Minnie Jin jumped in as well, even though she is, at this point, essentially unrelated to NewJeans. Nevertheless, she declared, NewJeans only becomes complete with all 5 members, their colors and voices interlock to form a whole. In any circumstance, NewJeans must remain 5. This comment is widely seen as a message aimed directly at the trio, the MHD. She also added, the essence of the lawsuit was directed at me, but don't drag the girls into it. They should be protected, not used. It rings hollow, coming from the person most responsible for putting the members through all of this in the first place. Minnie's statement is also being read as pressure on ADOR. But does ADOR, the article says, which currently holds all the leverage, have any reason to move according to the wishes of Minijin or the Rude trio? Even the company were to rebuild the group around Haerin and Hain, few would argue with the logic. Public sentiment is already leaning strongly in that direction. There's no compelling reason to pull the other three back in and risk rekindling internal conflict. With their ongoing inability to distance themselves from Minijin, the question becomes, why carry that burden at all? The article ends like this. An industry insider commented, what was needed was a natural, collective reconciliation, but that chance has already been lost. I hope ADOR makes the right call. Many staff who work with idols, not just me, are furious at the attitude of those three members. Bam. So you can see how these journalists are, what kinds of emotions that they're feeling right now. Some are angry, some are bewildered, some are frustrated, and this one, this journalist is angry. So yeah, Sports Soul questions whether ADOR should even bring all 5 members back, arguing that public sentiment favors Haerin and Hain, and that the trio keeps proving they are unwilling to act with humility. And this is where the conversation in Korea is heading. Not, when will they return as 5, but rather, why should they return as 5 at all? So after going through all these articles, I think one thing becomes clear. That Korean journalists aren't confused, and they're definitely not anti-NewJeans for fun. They are reacting to a year of choices that looked reckless, entitled, and completely out of touch with how contracts and responsibility actually work. And now that the dust is settling, hopefully, their message is surprisingly consistent. So they are saying, you walked out with no plan. You came back with no apology, and you still expect everyone to trust you. And whether people agree or disagree with that framing, it's unmistakably the dominant sentiment inside Korea right now. So I think what happens next depends on the girls. I mean, if they stay quiet, journalists will keep digging, right? If they speak carelessly, they will make the situation worse. Now, if they're sincere, humble, and willing to explain what happened, maybe the public will give them a second chance. But here's a real question. Does ADOR even want all 5 back? And do fans or people honestly believe the trio can repair the trust that they broke? And after seeing how sharp the Korean press has become, do you think the members and fans will adjust their understanding of the situation? I want to know what you think. And do these articles feel fair, too harsh, or honest? Let me know which article was the most memorable, most striking for you, and which part. Okay? Let me know in the comments. And as always, 혹시 이해가 됐을까요? Do you now understand? As always, let's stay positive, respectful, and classy. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. All right? God bless. Peace and love. Bye-bye.